welcome to this all-new episode of the Fairfax Sports Report. Yes, you have tuned into the right program. This is our annual Halloween episode. And before we reveal what the guys' costumes are tonight, we want to thank the folks that helped make this show possible, our good friends and teammates at CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs. And then, of course, we are on the web, www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. So check out our website for the latest scores, news and notes, articles, and interviews. And again, there you see CCI Screen Printing, 703-978-0257. Well, as always, I am delighted to be joined in the studio by Wynn Ellington and Jim Clark. Welcome, guys.
Yeah, that's Wynn. I just wanted to clear that that's Wynn, all right? How you doing, Wynn?
I'm good.
Well, guys, I love the costumes. They look great.
Well, don't tell anybody what mine is, okay?
Okay.
You gotta send me a send me a card and guess, and
We should have a raffle or something.
And what we'd like to do is give you about $6,000. I said we'd like to, but we don't have the budget for that, so we won't give you anything.
All right, well, guys, let's get into what we are here for, and that's to talk about everything that's happened around the region this week in the sports scene. And so let's jump right into the Concord District, one of the games of the week this week, Oakton versus Robinson. And you see Oakton got off to such a quick start. Chris Coyer passing to Jay Young, got on the board very quickly, and there's Danny Finyak going long right there, but Westfield had a tough time out of the gate on their first possession. Oakton stopped them, and then Trey Watts, you see that young man on your screen right there, he had a phenomenal night. He was running all over the place. He scored Oakton's second touchdown. As I said, Oakton got off to a very quick start, but this is Westfield, and Westfield was not going to be quiet for long. You see Finyak there again, did not complete that pass. Cole McInturf has been one of his favorites all season, but there you see Jordan Anderson, the train. He broke away for a 78-yard touchdown to get the Bulldogs on the scoreboard, answering an 80-yard touchdown from Trey Watts that we just showed you. So Westfield came roaring back. It looked like it might be all Oakton in the beginning, and there you see Jonathan, or maybe that's Trey Watts as well. He's 28. Jonathan Meadows is 25. They're two premier running backs over at Oakton. They have such a strong running game this season. And there you see the other player, Chris Coyer. He got pushed back a couple of yards there, but those three players, Watts, Meadows, and Coyer, all in line to possibly have 1,000-yard rushing seasons. They're all having phenomenal seasons on the year. And there you see Oakton's other quarterback there, Ryan Harris, completing a pass to Trey Watts. And what a beautiful move that was to try to gain just a couple more yards for the Cougars. And there's the other one, Jonathan Meadows, rushing there, gaining some yards for his club. And right before the end of the half, Oakton had a chance to score a touchdown. They were in great position, but just couldn't capitalize. You have to credit the Westfield defense because they held so strong. Oakton had to settle for the field goal at the half, and I spoke with their coach, Joe Thompson, at halftime, and he was really disappointed with the fact that they couldn't capitalize there. And here's Jordan Anderson again. He is one of the premier running backs in the region, and a lot of running backs this week had amazing weeks. We're going to tell you all about that later on in the program, but Jordan Anderson, certainly one of the best. And here you see Westfield trying to jump back into the game. Danny Finyak, their quarterback, having a great season so far, and they're rushing right there, trying to get that extra yardage there for the Bulldogs, and hopefully we'll see it. Danny Finyak had a great pass to Evan Winfrey. No, there's Jordan Anderson there again on the rush there, but just a great effort by both of those young men. And then here you see Meadows once again. As I said, he's one of their premier rushers for the Cougars, but they have a great passing game as well. There you see Chris Coyer couldn't capitalize on that one, but he's got a good arm on him. And there's Ray Goins again kicking another field goal for the Cougars. As I said, the Westfield defense really just stepped up on some of those possessions where it looked like Oakton was going to get more touchdowns, and the Westfield defense held strong. And they really, Evan Winfrey plays on defense as well, and he's been very strong this year, as well as Dylan Doty, another one of their players. And then, of course, Tyler Barfield and Tyler Delph. Everyone knows them from Westfield's offensive line. There you see Coyer again, player of the game on the night, just both his passing and his rushing, making him one of the premier quarterbacks in the region. He breaks away here for a touchdown. I think it was a 30-yard touchdown for Chris Coyer. He's been phenomenal all season.
Oh, you're doing fine. Keep going.
Keep going.
Well, there is.
We weren't at the game. You were, so don't.
Well, there was that
stop you.
beautiful pass from Finyak to Winfrey, who's number 10 for the Bulldogs. But you see, the Cougars just kept coming back and coming back.
That looks like that tight end Reynolds, their big tight end on the reception there.
That was Reynolds, and after the game, Coyer, that wasn't the play that they were going for. And while we were waiting for the interviews after the game, their coach Joe Thompson asked Coyer about that, and he said he was happy for Reynolds to finally get a touchdown.
Well, I know with that win that Oakton clinches the Concord District, and congratulations to Oakton. You know, at the beginning of the job, I think at the beginning of the season, their coach, we did their game. I think it was one of the first games we did.
The Oakton Madison game.
Yeah, and he had his doubts about his team, but you know, as they say, leagues are like milk. You know, cream rises to the top, and that's what they did. And you know, they had a wonderful, wonderful season.
Well, and this is a very senior-laden team. These guys have been together for a long time, and the thing that has impressed me so much about Oakton is their depth. I talked a lot about how they have those three guys all approaching 1,000-yard rushing seasons. It seems like on every defensive possession they were rotating people on their line and things like that. There's so many players over there.
The Concord District is tough. I mean, that is not a walk in the park like some other teams have, which we won't get into that. But you know, that's a tough district, and you've got to be on your game, and you've got to know when to peak, when not to peak, and that's exactly what happened. Oakton peaked right at the right time.
So they're 9-0. This is the second time in Oakton's history that they have been 9-0. They've never been 10-0 in the regular season, and so they've got one more roadblock in Herndon this coming Friday.
You know, let me ask you, Herndon can do that to you, can't they? Who they do that to the other day?
Westfield.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. One of the key stats I noticed from this game was Jordan Anderson. He had 176 yards rushing total, but 134 of those yards came in the first half. Do you recall any? What was the key to stopping him in the second half? Was it ball control by the Oakton offense, or was it just, do you recall any more aggressive play, any different scheme changes by the defense in the second half?
Well, there was certainly more passing in the second half by Westfield, more pass attempts, and certainly they were coming from behind there. But Oakton's defense, as you guys know, has been strong all season.
You've seen Westfield before.
Yes.
Did Oakton take Westfield out of their game?
You know, I don't think that they did. I mean, as I said, Oakton got off to that really strong start, and I was a little worried for Westfield whether or not they were going to jump back into it. But then Westfield came roaring back. And interestingly, before the game, Joe Thompson was really worried because he felt like there was so much pressure placed on this game. I mean, Westfield beat them 35-0 last year, and so he was a little worried that his team would come out a little too emotional. But when I spoke with him at halftime, he said that he thought the best thing in the first half was that they controlled that emotion so well. And then Westfield, you know, a lot of people thought, well, they had lost to Herndon the week before, but they came out strong, very steady. They never looked panicked or rushed.
And you know, one thing you got to say too about Oakton, and it doesn't get said enough about some of these teams that we talk about that have wonderful quarterbacks or wonderful running backs, is the linemen. I mean, if it wasn't for the linemen, you might as well forget it. Those guys would be they'd be the worst team in the league. It's the linemen that make it available or make it.
That's the only way you can have guys with 1,000-yard rushing seasons. So guys, that's one of the big games in the Concord District. Let's take a look at what the Concord District looks like now at the end of week 9. So we've told you that Oakton has won the district, but you can see the standings, Jim, if you want to take us through them.
All right, here we go. Oakton 5-0 in the district, 9-0 overall. Let's cross our fingers. They got Herndon coming up this week. See if they can go 10-0 for the first time. Chantilly 4-2, 7-2, followed by Westfield 3-2 and 7-2. Not a bad season. They're a great team. They have nothing to be disappointed about. Herndon, let's find out what happens this weekend. 3-2, 6-3, followed by Robinson, which had a real disappointing season as far as Robinson standards go, I'm sure, at 2-3 and 4-5, followed by Fairfax at 1-4, 4-5, and Centerville 0-5, 1-8.
You know, and Jim, you said, and you're right, that Robinson has not had the season that they have had in years past, but then this past weekend, they have a huge win over the Herndon club that just beat Westfield. And so this Robinson team, I mean, we've seen them play a couple of times, and we've talked a little bit about how, you know, little mistakes have cost them some touchdowns, but this was a huge win over Herndon for them.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, you know, they did not have a disappointing week at all. I mean, they just ran right over Herndon. I mean, it looks like, you know, Alex Murray and Winton Fox had big games. The offensive line did a great job of opening up holes for those running backs there. And but you never can count Robinson. You never can count Robinson out of any game. In their games against Oakton and Westfield, they were right in those games as well. And I think I don't think it's been too maybe win-loss. It's been a little disappointing, and I think they'll be the favorite against Fairfax to close out the season. But I think they're rebuilding here, and that they're going to, they have a lot of key players returning for next season. I mean, it's too early to look at that, and it's weird me trying to sound so analytical when I'm dressed like this. But no, they got.
It's hard to you should listen to you.
No, they got. They had. This is. They finished last season strong, and it looks like they're going to do the same this week as well. And we had talked to Herndon coach Joe Schaefer, and he had mentioned how he was having some problems getting his team to focus following their upset against Westfield. And Robinson was definitely focused in this last ball game. I think we had a few predictions about this.
I got to tell you, Herndon plays some tough teams in their district. Okay, and if they have just as good a chance of winning on Friday as Oakton does. So it's Oakton better not overlook Herndon, let me tell you.
That's a great point because, we weren't at the Westfield game. We didn't see it. But, I mean, certainly they beat a great Westfield club. And so Oakton certainly, and they know, when talking to them after the game, I mean, they still have some more business to do in getting through this regular season. So I think that's going to be a great game.
Yeah.
Well, this happens so often in each level of, I think, sports in general, but football in particular. Whereas, the underdog will come up with a great win, and then the next week they perform below standards. And this was an example of it. They have a hard time putting the upset behind them, which you can't hardly blame them for doing so. But it's just part of the. But you see this at each. You see this high school on through the pros all the time.
So, guys, we talked about some great rushers in that game. So we had Murray, we had Fox. So let's move on to Chantilly because they have another one of the premier running backs in the region, Torian Pace. And I feel like we talk about him every week, but he just continues to put up the numbers. And it seems like it is in some ways carrying his Chantilly team because he's the workhorse for this club.
How about those Chantilly Chargers led by Torian Pace? They reversed their curse. 12 years of losing to Centerville is over with. And, how about that reversing the curse just before Halloween? And, it's all led by that Charger rushing attack. That's their bread and butter. Torian Pace just right up the middle. And then, Kevin McGrath as well. But, it looks like some of these Centerville players had some big games, too. I thought, Centerville demonstrated a potent passing attack when we saw them against Robinson. And then, Cam Walter threw for over 200 yards, and he hit their junior wide receiver, Warren
your
Denny.
guy, Warren Denny, that you've given the props to earlier this season. He had a great game.
I thought he was a very talented. He seemed to be a very talented player. What I saw out of that Robinson game. But Chantilly, since halftime against Oakton, they really seem to have gotten better. Since then, they seem to as the season has progressed, and they're improving. At the right time, they could be peaking. Look out for those Chargers in the playoffs.
Oh yeah. Hey, it's
going
to be a good playoff season.
And Chantilly also has another roadblock coming up before they get into the playoffs, which we'll talk about later on. They have one of our games of the week we want to talk about and that are in our pick'em. So you'll see, we'll talk about that a little later, so stay tuned. But one more game in the Concord District to talk about, and that is Fairfax Falls Church. And when I understand you were there, and so what were your impressions of that game?
Well, this was not one of the higher profiles games, going on this past week, but it definitely was interesting to watch. Fairfax, they won with their rushing attack. Their rushing attack was just too much for Falls Church to handle, and their leading rusher, I was a little disappointed. I did not get to see Chris Regensburg
I was going to ask you, because I didn't see his name in the stat sheet.
Well, I found out before the game and talking to Coach Haddock that he had gotten injured against Chantilly, so he's out this week. But Fairfax also got two other players who they had not had earlier, Jack Carter and Mike Kemp. Both of those are running backs. But they ran a double wing offense, and they just they had kind of a nice thunder and lightning combination going on with McLennan was his name. He's a 220-pound running back. He always lined up right behind their quarterback Abdullah Amin, and so he was like the power runner. And then they had Augie Lewis, and he was the breakaway runner. He had 200 yards on 10 carries. So he really,
2 touchdowns.
Yeah, he just ran right through the Falls Church defense. Then that Carter, who he was a little guy, but he could really accelerate. They used him a lot on draw plays. But nothing really fancy happened in this game. Falls Church could just not handle the Fairfax rushing attack. But Falls Church did have a good passing attack. Quarterback Sam Jerome is a good player, and they have some good wide receivers as well. But once they got closer to the in scoring distance, they had a hard time capitalizing off of that.
I was going to ask you because I've seen a lot of stats for their quarterback, Sam Jerome, all season. He always seems to put up really good numbers. So I was going to ask you, what your impressions of him were and about his style.
Well, yeah, he was a good quarterback. He did Falls Church picked up a lot of first downs. I mean, he's regular height. He got some pretty good pass blocking. But they only keep one running back in there, Marcus Hughes, and he would line up right next to him. So they would usually send about 4 wide receivers out each play. So, I mean, their offense is built. That's their strength is their speed. And so their offense is built around that. They just, had it's just other elements of the, and they never did throw, it wasn't bombs either. They really didn't throw bombs. There's a lot of, 10 to 20 yard route, more like 5 to 20 yard routes that those receivers ran.
Well, before we leave the Concord District, we want to congratulate our Concord District Players of the Week this week. It is 2 players. We couldn't pick between them because they were both so phenomenal in this effort last week. So it is Robinson's 2 running backs, Alex Murray and Winton Fox, 2 seniors over there. You see Murray's stats, you see Fox's stats. They combined for over 400 yards together and 4 touchdowns. They're both having amazing seasons, and they complement each other so well. So congratulations to Alex and Winton.
Before we go on, I have a Halloween question for you. All right?
Okay.
Bryn, you should get this right off the bat. Willie Nelson and Julio Iglesias recorded a Halloween song. What was the name of it?
Pancho and Lefty?
No.
I have no idea. I'm not good at music
To all the
trivia.
ghouls I've loved before. All right.
Well, so before Halloween, we give you a Halloween joke here.
No, do we have highlights?
Oh, do we have, if we have highlights of the Falls Church Fairfax game, we were there, as you know, Wynn was there. So Wynn, why don't you tell us what's happening?
All right, well, that was an attempted field goal that did not go right. And then here's Fairfax's first play of the ball game. Augie Lewis right up the middle, just cuts right through the Falls Church defense. 15, 10, 5. And then he did get in the end zone on that. And there's McClennan. Actually, he did not. McClennan ended up getting the point. But here's Augie Lewis again, right up the middle. You see the kind of hole they had open for him. He gets a nice cut there, goes down the sideline, finds Pater. All right, and here is Falls Church's touchdown. That was Garima hitting Jeremy. And then right in the middle, that was Jack Carter. He's kind of a little back, as I mentioned. He goes right in the middle. As you can see, they're just running right over the Jaguars. And here's Amin. Falls Church doing a nice job on the pass rush there. And that's a replay of that the field goal where the snap was bobbled. All right, once again, Carter right up the middle. Gets a nice, and then he fumbled. This was at the beginning of the second half. Falls Church gets the recovery. Fairfax didn't pass much, but Abdullah Amin hits his wide receiver there right at the goal line, and then right up the middle that time, that's Ben McClennan, the bigger back, getting the touchdown. This is Lewis again, and just untouched into the end zone.
So it looks like a very fun game to be at. So now we will leave the Concord District and go into another one of our districts, the Patriot District. And so let's take a look at what the Patriot District standings look like now. So Wynn, if you want to take us through the Patriot District.
All right, up at the top, West Springfield, 5-1 district record, 6-3 overall. South County, an identical record, 5-1 in the district, 6-3 overall. Also identical, Annandale. Then right there in the middle, the T.C. Williams Titan, 3-3 in the district, 3-6 overall. Lake Braddock, 2-4 in the district, 4-5 overall. West Potomac's 2-4 in the district, 5-4 overall. Lee, 2-4 in the district, 3-6 overall. Then at the bottom, Hayville, they've been giving some people some pretty good games, but 0-6 in the district, 1-8 overall.
All right, so the Patriot District, certainly one of the ones that a lot of people are looking at this coming weekend because there's a huge game going on Annandale and South County that's coming up. So guys, South County this week, they beat Hayfield, and this is a Hayfield team. Again, I think a lot of these teams, you look at their records and they're a lot better than their records indicate.
Hayfield played them pretty tough, but also, you got to wonder too, and I don't want to minimize Hayfield's effort whatsoever because, they're coming back. They'll be back. They're growing like Braddock's having the same problem this year. But, South County may have rested a couple of people this year looking this week or this past week looking ahead to the big game they got coming up, with all the cards on the table with Annandale on Friday. So, you don't know what went on. If they were looking, maybe, who knows, South County may be looking ahead. But
the one guy they certainly did not rest was Eric Dorsey, one of their running backs, finishing the game with 3 touchdowns, a huge effort from Dorsey, and he's been amazing all season. He's been one of our players of the week, but having just another sensational effort against Hayfield.
Yeah, from the looks of it, everybody, Hayfield played them tough.
Well, and you have to give a lot of credit to their quarterback, too, Anton McCallum. He puts up the numbers every week. He puts up the rushing numbers and the passing numbers. He's another one of those very mobile quarterbacks like Coyer and Renner in the region.
A lot of good running quarterbacks this year. I can't recall when we've had so many quarterbacks who are also, as adept as running as they are, just the number in the district. But, McCollum's just, he's another example of that as demonstrated by the stats you just mentioned, 137 yards on 19 carries. Bring back the wishbone.
So moving on to another one of the big games in the Patriot District, and Jim, I understand
I was at that game.
At the West Springfield Lake Braddock.
Yeah.
So what were your impressions
Well,
of that
I got
one?
to tell you something. I don't know. Brandon Johnson for Lake Braddock was the quarterback, and I thought the Lake Braddock offense looked as good as they have all year. They seem to have a little bit more, they stepped a little bit more lively. They just seem to be moving a little bit more, They were up against West Springfield, and there's, some players weren't there this past week that they probably could have used. But, the score, even though it was, 41-20, I thought Lake Braddock played a much better game than the score shows. Plus, Brandon Johnson just did a heck of a ball game, and I'm surprised he hasn't been in there all year. Michael Niebrick has been the quarterback. He's a sophomore. He's made a lot of sophomore-ish mistakes, but Brandon Johnson really had things working.
Well, and on the other side of the coin, I'm sure everyone in the region very happy to see Bren Renner back after being out against T.C. Williams with the shoulder injury, and then he comes back and just has another Bren Renner
he looked
performance.
Fine. They looked fine. Blake Braddock's biggest problem is the defense, and they were playing a really, really good offense that just is good doing everything, passing, running, and they just. As far as passing goes, Lake Braddock has almost zero defense on that. They really need to work on that in the offseason is to get some passing defense. They need to work on the whole defense because one thing you could always count on with Lake Braddock was their defense. This year you couldn't do that.
Well, what made Brandon Johnson so effective?
I don't know. It's like it sparked new life into the team. I don't know. Maybe a change. You never know. But he just did a really great job. He seemed to have a cool head about him. He didn't seem to panic. He seemed to hold on to the ball. And like I said, not make sophomore mistakes.
And one more point just about West Springfield is, I didn't see Brandon Bailey in the stat sheet, but Dan Collins really stepped up for West Springfield, and we've talked about this all season for them, that they have so many players, so even when someone's out with an injury or something else, someone else can step right in. All right, so guys, I think we have on the line our guest for tonight, Coach Dick Adams from Annandale High School. Coach, can you hear me? Oh, okay, sorry. We do not have him on the phone, unfortunately. But guys, well, let's segue into that game then, because another big game, and this was one of our pick'ems, was Annandale West Potomac. And so the score was actually, it was a close score in this game. I mean, certainly Annandale coming on very strong near the end of the season, but West Potomac, they've had a couple of rough weeks, but it looks like they gave Annandale a very good game.
Yeah, this West Potomac team, I'm very curious about. And after they get, take some tough beatings toward the middle of the season. This is similar to what we've seen last year. What do you know? It sounds like a broken record here, but their offense puts up 27 points. Their passing attack seems like it was back in order, but it looks like it was a little bit of a shootout. And Annandale just came up on top. Another great performance by their quarterback Kason Kynes, and good game from their wide receivers as well. Melvin Robinson, he always puts up some good numbers each week, along with Rob Potts.
Yeah, they have two very strong wide receivers there, and when you have a quarterback like Kason Kynes, it makes very good wide receivers very dangerous.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something. Dick Adams puts a competitive team out on that football field every year after year after year. And the thing that's interesting about him, and I have some ties to Lake Braddock, so I'm pay attention to that district. You really don't hear a lot about Annandale. You hear about the West Potomacs, the West Springfields, Lake Braddock, but and then all of a sudden you go, oh my God, we're playing Annandale, and you look at their record, they've had a pretty good year. So they're a great team, and they sneak up on you, and because I don't think they get the play as far as press goes that some of the other schools get, but they're on that schedule, and they're very, very, very competitive, not only in football, but in every sport in the Patriot District.
That's a great point. And so certainly I alluded to the Annandale South County game. We'll talk about it a little later on in the program. But finally, one last game in the Patriot District this week was Lee T.C. Williams. And of course, T.C. Williams had the upset last week against West Springfield. And I know when you were there to see that game. And then this week they lose to Lee. And they've just had such an up and down season. Every coach you talk to talks about what a great team this T.C. Williams team is. But they've just really had the ups and downs this season.
Yeah, they're kind of a mystery. Their defense looked great against West Springfield. West Springfield seemed a little bit off their game. I don't know what really happened to them against Lee, but if there's a pattern with T.C. Williams, it's kind of inconsistency. You never know what they're gonna do.
Right.
I mean, they can come up with a huge win and then play somebody tough, or they can they can just drop have a letdown like they did against Lee. And Lee's played some teams pretty tough too, even though they're probably a little bit better team than what their record shows as well. Saw some Lee coaches out there when I was at the T.C. Williams game against West Springfield, so maybe they got a pretty good scouting report.
Where do they play this game at? Did they play it at Lee or at T.C. Williams? Does anybody know?
I'm not sure.
So if they played it at Lee, I know what happened. T.C. Williams is getting too used to that nice field that they have and got over at Lee and couldn't play on regular grass anymore. That's what happened.
Well, you may have
possibly
uncovered the reason.
Well, before we leave the Patriot District, let's congratulate our Patriot District Player of the Week. I talked a little bit about him, but Jim, if you want to take us through this one.
It is Dan Collins, running back from West Springfield. He's a junior, and he had 18 carries for 113 yards and a touchdown. Also 6 receptions for 86 yards. And that's what I was saying. To hear all the yards, the receptions and stuff, that's the defense that didn't show up for Lake Braddock this past week.
So now we are going to take a break from football and go into cross country for those.
Oh no, not that!
For those in the region that follow cross country, you will know that this week, tomorrow, is the Northern Region Championship. And so that means that the district championships have occurred. And so we want to go through who won them and tell you a little bit about what happened at the respective district championships. So first, let's start with the Concord district. And on the boys' end of it, probably no surprise for a lot of people, Oakton won. But Robinson was only 5 points behind them. And actually, one of their premier runners, Jared Berman, was the one who took home the individual title in the Concord district. He finished very strong. Some of the Oakton runners, though, Neil Hendricks and Andrew McCullen, finished 3rd and 4th, respectively, to help their team come home with that title. And then on the girls' end of it, probably the favorite was Herndon, but as you see there on your screen, Robinson was the one that came away with the trophy. They had a great outing by a number of their girls, but it was Stephanie Bray who took home the individual title for Robinson. Herndon's runner, Haruni Wijinaratne, she finished 3rd in that event. And then you see the Liberty District was all Thomas Jefferson. And when I say all Thomas Jefferson, I mean all Thomas Jefferson. They had such a sensational day. On the boys' end of it, it was Alex Whitco coming home with the individual title. And They finished with 19 points in total. Their next closest competitor had 52 points. That was Woodson. So you see that they literally ran away with it by a mile, pun intended there. And the same was true on the girls' end of it. It was Stephanie Marzen for the girls who got the individual title for Thomas Jefferson. And Woodson was their closest competitor, but the girls for Thomas Jefferson finished with 25 points and Woodson finished with 64. So you see that Thomas Jefferson just had a phenomenal day, great event for them going into the Northern region. So 2 districts down, 2 to go. And when we look at the Patriot District and we look at the National District, you'll see that it was Lake Braddock and Edison having great days, respectively. There probably no surprise in the Patriot District that Lake Braddock won both the boys and the girls titles. Lake Braddock recently got back Alex Clark, who's one of their premier runners. He was injured earlier in the season, but he came back and finished 3rd in that event to help Lake Braddock take home the title. Scott Plunkett from Annandale was the individual winner in the Patriot District. 2nd place went to Notnail Dago from Lee, and then 3rd was Alex Clark, as I said. And then on the girls' end of it, no surprise. Lake Braddock has been so dominant so far this season, and Liana Epstein, she was the individual champion for Lake Braddock, just continuing her sensational season. Then finally, in the National District, Edison, and no one was surprised that it was the Degfay twins finishing 1st and 2nd in that event to help Edison bring home the trophy there. And on the girls' end, their teammate Maya Hicks finishing strong. She was the individual champion on the girls' end of it. So as I said, Thursday, if you are interested at Burke Lake, there will be the Northern Region Championships. The men's event starts at 3:15. It will be closely followed by the girls' event at 4 p.m. And so I will tell you next week what happens, but if I had to pick, I'd probably say that the favorites on the boys' end of it, it's going to be another shootout between Robinson and Oakton. And then on the girls' end of it, Thomas Jefferson and Lake Braddock continue to look really strong, so they'll probably fight it out on the girls' side. So we'll see how my predictions pan out. It's a lot easier when I don't have the guys giving theirs as well, right? All right, so, but speaking of you guys, let's jump back into the football.
All right.
And so let's take a look. We're going to move into the Liberty District now. And so certainly this week was a huge week for the Stonebridge Bulldogs. And I feel like every week they put up the amazing numbers. But they had a great week. And before we talk about that, Wynn, if you want to take us through the rankings.
Okay. Stonebridge, big shocker on top. 6-0 in the district, 9-0 overall. Clawing at them are the Woodson Cavaliers, 6-0 in the district, 7-2 overall. Then here comes those Madison Warhawks, 4-2 in the district, 5-4 overall. Langley, 3-3 in the district, 4-5 overall. The Statesmen of Marshall, 2-4 in the district, 4-5 overall. Thomas Jefferson with a good track team, 2-4 in the district, 3-6 overall. South Lake, 1-5 in the district, 2-7 overall. Then down at the bottoms still, the McLean Highlanders, 0-6 in the district, 0-9 overall.
Yeah, and I got one thing to say about Stonebridge beating Thomas Jefferson 70-7. And I want you to look at me right now, Stonebridge. Here's the deal, all right? 70-7. No,
take on all
70-7. Just wait for the math and science fair, friends. It's coming, and you've had it. We're getting you back. All right? There we go. Okay.
Stonebridge, I mean, several times this season, they have set their school record for points scored in a game. There's 70 points here. They had 551 yards on offense, and you have to give a lot of credit to their running backs over there. They have so many of them, and very impressed with their effort this week.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure this is just, an exceptional big week for Stonebridge. I mean, it was kind of, expected, I think.
Let's beat up on the little guys. 70-7. Yeah, that's a big week for them, huh?
But it was, their offense continues to just light up the scoreboard. They, when they show up, whether it's home or away, make sure those batteries are charged to the scoreboard. But they do have so many weapons. Like you said, with led by quarterback Patrick Thompson, Prince. I mean, and they, the stat. No individual player. One thing that's kind of impressive about them is instead, in addition to winning, is no individual player has outlandish stats. It's spread, the scoring and then the yards are spread out between between so many players. But I mean, I guess I'm not too surprised about the score here because they've been beating some of the other programs by 50 or 60 points, and Thomas Jefferson is probably a little bit below them. So,
like I said, wait till the math and science fair. All right.
So, in a huge game this week in the Liberty District was the Woodson and Langley game. And these are two teams that people were really looking at a lot this season. And then Danny Pritchett got injured and Langley had some tough times, but he was back. And Woodson coming out with the win, but certainly Langley has to be happy to have their quarterback, Danny Pritchett, back playing on the field.
Yeah, we were there that day you got hit. It's very good to see. Great to see a player come back anytime he's been injured. And I think Patrick Kelly, is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Kelly, I think he did an admirable job. I know when he came in right after Pritchett, thank you. I'm an older man. Pritchett went down, did just a fantastic job that day. We marveled upon that for a couple of weeks. But then hey, I'm glad Pritchett's back and good to see him.
One thing about Woodson, and I think it's reflected in this ball game, is that they don't have, too many weaknesses. They're strong on defense, strong in both the passing and the running game on offense. As you look here, James Johnson, over 100 yards on the ground. Weisenegger, he continues to, have pretty big weeks. Even if he doesn't catch a lot of passes, like this past Friday, he just had 3 receptions, but 2 of those went for touchdowns. So he really gives them that big play capability. And then Connor Riley, he has been such such an asset for this Woodson team. 108 yards passing, that's not too fancy, but he completes 6 passes, 3 of those went for touchdowns. So and then he rushes for 54 yards, and then a strong defensive effort by Jake Sweeney and the rest of the Cavalier defense. They were, show that they were the much better team than Langley this past Friday. And, it is a veteran team, and it's paid off for them.
Yeah, they look very efficient, Woodson does, when you look at the number of opportunities people had on rushing and passing and whatever, and I
could have just said efficient. It would have been much better.
Well, we're a team. Help each other out.
Yeah, well, the game I'm looking for, we haven't talked about it yet. The game I'm looking for is Woodson and Stonebridge this week because I think Woodson's going to give them a game.
Oh, I completely agree with you. There's so many good games coming up this weekend, and that's one of the premier ones because it'll be interesting to see how Stonebridge fares against this Woodson club. But before we leave the Liberty District, let's take a look at our Liberty District Player of the Week, and Wynn talked just a little bit about him. It's Jake Sweeney over at Woodson. You see his defensive stats from the game: 9 tackles, 6 assists, 1.5 sacks. He began the season playing linebacker, and a lot of people may remember his name from last season because he was Woodson's premier running back, but the emergence of James Johnson has allowed him to focus more defensively, and he's been doing a great job. Coach Trey Taylor's had some wonderful things to say about him throughout the season.
Well, I think he's, plays fullback on offense too, big rugged tick, so he's used a lot as a blocking back on offense, which has helped Johnson pick up some of the yards he has. But he's quite a player.
Now, one final district to go. It is the National District. So let's take a look at what the standings look like in the National District. Jim, if you want to tell everyone what's going on there.
All right, high atop the National District, Edison 6-0 in the district and 9-0 overall, followed by Mount Vernon, who beat Yorktown. Way to go, Mount Vernon! And they're in second place, 4-1, 7-2 overall, followed by Yorktown, 3-2 and 5-4. Washington Lee, 3-2 and 5-4. Also Wakefield, 2-3, 3-6, the hardest high school to find in the whole metro area. Stewart is 0-5 and 1-8. And Falls Church, come on, Jaguars, you got to do better than that. 0-5 and 0-9.
That's what the National District looks like right now. And Edison had a big game this week. I mean, you look at the score, this Washington and Lee team, I've talked a lot about them. We've talked a lot about them this season. They're having a really good year, but this Edison club is sensational. They are, one of the best teams I've seen play. And they defeated Washington at Lee 51.
And I know I'm always picking on Stonebridge for scoring too many points. I think 51-0 is a little bit obnoxious too. So, sorry.
but one player over at Edison that is having an amazing season. We talk about him a lot, but you have to because he's just that amazing, and that's Stephon Robertson, finishing this game with 4 touchdowns. And, you know, when we saw him play, I was very impressed, but it's just week after week. He's so consistent. He's an amazing running back, and his teammates, you know, Angus Harper was talking about him after the game and was just talking about, you know, how helpful it is for them to have someone like him. It's easy, you know, for him to be a running back as well, along with Stephon.
You know, maybe you can answer something for me. Is Washington, Edison is kind of in the same area, you know, as Washington and Lee, okay? They don't have a big pool. When I say that, they don't have a big pool to choose from, okay? A lot of their players, maybe more soccer players in that area than there are football players. What makes them so much more special, do you think, than the rest of that league?
Well,
I mean, that division?
Edison they just have an extraordinary amount of talent. I don't know what, you know, enables them to, you know,
but
draw
I agree with that because it's just when you see their players year after year, you know, even because Von Lewis was talking to us before the game that we did, and he was talking about the fact that a lot of the kids get there, they haven't played football before, but these kids are just amazing athletes. And so they learn the game, they learn the skills, they learn the formations, and you know, when you have amazing athletes, it doesn't matter what sport they're playing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, as a coach, I'm just trying to figure that out because you see the other teams. I mean, they're good football schools. They're great schools. You know, great kids, great everything. But they don't have the pool as say the Robinson or the Stonebridge or the, you know, as you work your way out, and that's just life, and that's how it works. But
it seems
Edison,
to be a very well-run program, and it
has
seems
been.
that he gets a lot out of it. He seems that he really does a good job in developing those players, and he's, you know, I think they got they got a lot of really good assistants as well there. Von Lewis has been very complimentary of his assistants, but you know, they're always, you know, they always have a lot of the right combination of, you know, speed and aggressiveness.
Sure.
They're, you know, they're lean, mean fighting machines. They're a little bit bigger this year than what I've seen in the past from them, but they just have that right combination. You know, they're just very well balanced all over. And
because you see more of this than I do, and that's why I was asking.
they're always a very fun. They are a very fun team to cover.
And when I officiated too, I officiated a number of their games, and they were even back, you know, it's been 3 years since I've officiated. You know, they were very strong, you know, for the 7 years that I officiated. So they've been a strong team for a long time, and that's why I wondered the difference, and that's why I asked.
But you know, they have a good basketball program. They have
Well, we talked about cross country, their track and field. You know, we saw their stats up there, and they're one of the contenders in the region in that event coming up. So
geographically, they shouldn't be. You know, and that's just the facts. I mean, you know, I'm not trying to, you know. Okay, let's get out of that. Go on.
Well, and then the other big game in the National District this past week was Mount Vernon, Yorktown. And guys, I think we all picked Mount Vernon to win this game, even though you've talked about the curse. We have coaches on our show, and then they seem to lose. So we should apologize to Herndon. But Mount Vernon coming out with the win here. But it was a close one, 22-20. They pulled it out against a very strong Yorktown team that has Kyle Toulouse, who is just continuing to have a sensational season. Just needs probably a little more help over there.
Yeah, Kyle Toulouse is everything for Yorktown. Mount Vernon, you know, they eke out the win, and you know they still stay, you know, they're still having a great season, wins and losses. But you know that's just going to happen during the course of the season. You're going to have some close ones there, and you know, a game like that, you know, it could probably help them as they, you know, go into the playoffs.
Well,
But you know, right? You know, Edison's dominant. You know, is the dominant team in the National District. But you know, those next 3 teams, a lot of times it's pretty fierce competition for that second place, even though that's not what they want to be fighting for.
Well, you know, I think schools like Washington, Lee, Mount Vernon, they all do wonderful with what they have to work with, and you know, you too. There are a lot of single people that live in that area and the high rises and stuff like that. So they just don't have the big pool as, you know, they do as you move farther out in the suburbs.
Well, speaking of Mount Vernon, let's congratulate our National District Players of the Week this week. It's 2 young men from Mount Vernon, Kyle Ricks and Brandon O'Clisham, 2 of their running backs over there. You see their stats from this past week, and then 2 weeks ago against Centerville. Both of those young men had amazing performances as well. They scored 3 touchdowns combined in the first quarter, so congratulations to our National District Players of the Week.
All right.
So we've run through all the districts pretty quickly, as we normally have to do. So you've seen what happened. We told you what happened. Now you get to see our top 10 list, the way that we think the region has shaped up. So you can see if you disagree with what we have to say or agree with what we have to say. So let's take a look at what the region has broken down to look like. So Wynn, if you want to take us through them.
All right. The Fairfax Sports Report Top 10. At number 1, the Oakton Cougars. At number 2, the Stonebridge Bulldogs. At number 3, the team that really confuses you, Jim, the Edison Eagles. At number 4, the Westfield Bulldogs. At number 5, the Chantilly Chargers. At number 6, the West Springfield Spartans. Number 7, the Woodson Cavaliers. Number 8, the South County Stallions. Number 9, the Mount Vernon Majors. And rounding out the top 10, a team that you really admire, Jim.
I do.
The Annandale Adams.
So not.
You know what else I admire? I admire that you go down the list and know the mascot for each one of those schools. That's what I admire.
Hey, when you're dressed like this, you really, it's kind of a
You gotta have a
mascot
gimmick,
thing.
huh? That's your gimmick.
Well, so not a lot of movement in the top 10 this week. The only big movement, of course, Oakton moving up to the number 1 spot.
And
They
why?
were-
Why? Someone tell me why they went from 1 to 2.
Because their win over Westfield was so impressive. That
Okay.
Westfield team, that really, I think, established their preeminence in the region.
But Oakton has played a much harder schedule all season long. And I'll confess, I have voted for the Concord District team, who was top, to be in the number 1 spot because of that, because they played the hardest district all year long.
It's very
And I
valid.
mean, when you're sure, it's fun to beat schools 70-7 and you don't have anything to worry about. But Oakton didn't. They were nail biters almost every week, and so that's why I always went for usually the Concord team, because that was the strongest team as far as I was concerned. Wynn, you going to disagree with me? You better not with that.
The
ugly
strongest team in the Division 6, yes, I agree that Oakton is the strongest team in Division 6.
Okay. Yeah, well.
I agree with that as well. Okay.
But I believe they were the strongest team before the Westfield game.
Did
I
you?
was a believer before they beat the Bulldogs.
Okay. All right.
Well, and of course.
So it's your fault then.
These
well,
are PowerPoint ratings.
Okay.
I take no blame for anything, but let's see what the Virginia High School League has to say about everything with their PowerPoint ratings. So, Jim, if you want to take us through what Division 6 looks like, your Cougars there up on the top.
All right, Division 6, where are we? Here we are. Oakton on top, 33.1, followed by Westfield, 30.1. Right behind them is Chantilly at 29.8, West Springfield 28.1, Woodson 27.4, Herndon 26.1. Here comes South County with a 26. Also Annandale with a 26. That's going to be a great game on Friday night, I'm going to tell you. And West Potomac, they've had kind of a disappointing season. I was hoping that they'd come back from that one loss, but they haven't real well. They're at 24.9, followed by Langley at 24.8.
So you see what the region looks like in Division 6 right now. Of course, this last week will have huge implications for the playoffs. And so you'll get to see what happens after this weekend, but lots of pressure on some of these games. And now let's take a look at Division 5, the Division 5 PowerPoint rating. So Wynn, if you want to take us through Division 5.
Yeah, could you do it in your regular voice this time?
You sure?
No, maybe not. Maybe not.
Okay.
We like your regular.
Sure about that. Be careful what you ask for. All right. All right, number
We better
one.
be quiet. I think Cleopatra's getting mad at us.
Number 1, the Thomas Edison Eagles. Number 2, the Stonebridge Bulldogs. Number 3, the Mount Vernon Majors. At number 4, the Madison Warhawks with 24 points. I haven't read the actual ratings. Number 5, the Yorktown Patriots, 24.1. 6, the Washington Lee Generals, 22.3. 7, the Georgia Marshall Statesmen, the Marshall Plan, 21.2. Tied for 7th, the Robert E. Lee Lancers, 21.2. And number 9, the Thomas Jefferson Colonials, 20.8. At number 10, the Wakefield Warriors at 20.1.
And again, you got them all right.
Very
That's great.
impressive. Very impressive.
All right, that is. Let's give a little T-clap, shall we?
Absolutely. Good job, Wen.
Well, thank y'all.
So now it's time for my favorite part of the show, which is when we get to do our pick'ems and see who we think are going to win the big games that are coming up this weekend. And as I alluded to earlier in the show, we do have some really great games coming up. So let's get into it, guys. We've talked about this game several times already this season. We've been looking forward to it. It's Chantilly Edison. And so, Wen, who do you think is going to come out on top of that one?
Well, I've really been doing some soul searching about what my pick will be for this game. I don't know if you can find a soul in here, but I've been trying to find one. But, I have gotten a lot of, the Edison people have really, some of the games we've done, they really have been nice to me about picking on Edison. And I hate to go against them this time, but, prognosticating is not a popularity contest. And I think the Chantilly Chargers are a little bit more battle tested and that they've really been peaking as the season has progressed. And I'm gonna, go with the Chargers.
Do you agree with Wen, Jim?
No, I do not. I'm going with Edison. So there you go.
Well,
Win.
I hate to jinx Edison because I feel like a lot of times, Jim, when you and I agree that our team loses. But I'm going to pick Edison as well.
Okay.
So
Chantilly's going to win that game.
I'm very impressed with Edison so far this season. Corey Washington, Christian Washington, Angus Harper, Stephon Robertson, Levi Barber. So many amazing players over there. Frank Figueroa on the offensive line. So I'm looking for Edison to come out on top, but I think it's going to be a close one.
Oh yeah, this is going to be one heck of a game. I mean, this is not a pick I'm just making easily here. I mean, I've been weighing this back and forth, but I don't know. Chantilly has lost to Westfield and Oakton this year. They're like their two biggest rivals, and I think they're not going to let Edison get by them.
Next, we have Herndon at Oakton, and so probably the favorite in this one is Oakton. But Jim, do you think that Herndon can pull off the upset?
No. I think I'd love to see that because I think Herndon's had a great time this year. They've had a good team. They're in a tough district, but I just think Oakton's I think they're too loaded.
We've seen them both win. What do you think?
Oh, I'm in full agreement with Jim on this one. It's the Oakton Cougars. They'll finish the season undefeated. They'll finish the regular season undefeated. We'll see what will happen in the playoffs. But Oakton is the definite favorite.
How about you?
I completely agree with you guys. I think it's all Oakton. So let's move on.
So Herndon's going to win that game.
There may be a little bit of revenge. There may be somewhat of a revenge factor for the Cougars in this game.
That's a great point.
Herndon upset them last year to close out the regular season 35-34. So
on a very controversial 2-point conversion. So there's a little history in that game. So we'll see if Oakton comes out and avenges that loss from last season. Now moving on, this was the one that I have a lot of trouble with, picking a team. It's South County at Annandale. Who do you think is going to win that game?
Yeah, this is going to be another close game. I think with it being at Annandale, that will give them a little bit more of an advantage. But I have a hard time picking against South County unless it's completely obvious to me. And I'm gonna Vendorf really seems to get his teams to play well in big games. I'm gonna go with the Stallions.
Would you like me to do my Win Ellington impression?
Well, tell us who you think is going to win.
I'm just teasing you.
No, I'm not sensitive.
I'm going with Annandale.
Okay.
I just, after seeing the game between Hayfield and South County last week, I don't know what's going on there, if it was just a bad week, but Annandale, like I said, they're always right there to come up and get you when you don't want them to, and I got a hunch they're going to do it. So I go with Annandale.
I guess I'm the tiebreaker, and I'm going to pick South County. This was really tough for me. I think that Annandale is going to come out very strong. I think South County is going to come from behind and win.
Both of you be that way.
And do what they continue to do, which is have these amazing finishes where they win. So my pick is South County. Now, Jim, it's time for your game. I know you've been looking forward to this one for a while. So Woodson at Stonebridge. Who you got?
Jeez. If I pick Woodson, Stonebridge will win. If I pick Stonebridge, Woodson will win. So, I can't win for losing. But I think Woodson. I think Woodson's going to give them a heck of a game. I'm going to push for Woodson. Hey, I hope both teams have a great, safe game, and whoever wins, I'm just as happy.
Win.
But did you make a pick?
Yeah, I said I want Woodson to win.
Well, is that who you think's going to win?
Yeah, that's who's going to win.
No upset out at Ashburn Friday night. Stonebridge wins this one.
I think I have Stonebridge as well. So finally, guys, Yorktown at Washington Lee. Both of these teams having to rebound after tough losses this week. So who do you have in the National District?
I'm going to go Yorktown.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Yorktown.
I think I'm going to pick Yorktown as well.
All right, so
you heard
Washington
it
Lee
here.
will win that game.
You heard it here first. Now, before we go, we want to go into one more segment of the show, and that is our cheerleading segment.
All right, come
For
on,
those who are fans of cheerleading, coming up this weekend at Robinson High School is the Northern Region Cheerleading Championship. So you see how the districts broke down. Fairfax winning the Concord District. This may have surprised some people because, of course, Chantilly is the defending state champion, but Fairfax had a great day. Coach Wes Vaughn has to be really pleased with how well his team did. They won by nearly 20 points in that event. Now, the Liberty District, no surprise there. Stonebridge winning that event. Of course, in their short history as a school, they've only been around since 2000. They've won 3 state championships, 6 district titles, so not a surprise. They come out strong in the Liberty District. They do have a first-year head coach, Nick Marcio, who is a former Stonebridge athlete, so they're doing very well under his leadership. Now, in the Patriot District, congratulations, West Springfield. For the 3rd year in a row, they come out on top. They had, before the event started, one of their athletes was injured. They had an alternate step in at the last minute, and as you can see, they were still very, very effective in that event. And then finally closing out in the National District, we've talked a lot about Edison. They do well in football, they do well in cross country, and there you see they do well in cheerleading as well. And so as I said, that event is this coming weekend over at Robinson High School. So if you're interested, definitely check it out. Well, that is all the time that we have this week, but thank you very much for joining us for our Halloween episode. Again, we want to thank the folks that helped make this show possible, our good friends at CCI Screen Printing, 703-978-0257. And again, do not forget that we are on the web, www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. So that is all the time that we have this week. We want to wish you all a happy and safe Halloween from everyone here at the Fairfax Sports Network. And we will be back next week, so please join us then.